Well, good evening again, everybody. I am Ethan Greenberg, along with my co-host Madison Delaney, and we are going nuclear, full-blown coverage of the land. And it's been a pretty good week here so far for Cleveland sports. Going back to last week when we last talked to each other, the Browns, the Cavs, winners, and even the Guardians making the news as they flashed their leather during the season, and 4 Gold Glove Award winners. And we will talk about that here coming up. So, Madison, what did you think of? Well, let's talk Browns. What did you think of Monday night's performance?
I think I was shocked as it was happening. It was almost like, is it really happening? I think at one point when we were up 11-0, I tweeted, like, this is just going to end 12-11, isn't it? Just out of spite for us. Like, that's just how it goes. It feels like that's how it goes this year. But I mean, the defense brought it. Obviously, we've tended to play pretty well against Joe Burrow to date. It's kind of like a perfect game. Like, I don't want to say it out loud too much because you don't want to ruin it. But everybody keeps talking about it, I guess. So I was really impressed. It was a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. They seemed to play pretty well on the national stage in the spotlight on in prime time. And so I was impressed with the way they were able to put together a total team effort. All phases kind of came together, and the Browns, with the big victory, it was a divisional game. They defeat Cincinnati 32-13, and really, in my opinion, kept the season alive. They are still 2 games behind Baltimore, but they're a game behind Cincinnati overall. But again, they've got some good things going for them with the 2-1 divisional record, and for us longtime Browns fans, we certainly know that there have been many seasons where we might have had 2 wins in the division all season, or even less, or 2 wins for the entire schedule. So you got that going on for you there. But I would say there were still a couple of things, and I guess this is good news. I don't know how you look at it. I'll let you chime in on this, where it wasn't a perfect performance. There are still things upon which the team can improve. And a couple of things that I noticed. The first one, what was Kevin Stefanski thinking? Late in the first quarter, scoreless game, and he decides some kind of a gadget play was, a good idea to have Amari Cooper throw it. And that clown, now he says in his defense he was trying to throw it out of bounds, but that was just a horrendous play in my opinion. And then the other thing was, and I noticed this as well, this was crazy. It was like a bad omen. 12 men on the field, first play of the game. I mean, how are you going to do that? How are you going to come out of the locker room and have 12 men on the field? What say you?
Yeah. The 12 men on the field feels pretty inexcusable. I mean, maybe they were trying to figure out, what they were in and tried to run somebody on late, and then someone didn't get off in time. I don't know. But regardless, I mean, that can't happen. You can't do that. I did think that was a bad omen, though, but it turned out to be okay. As far as the gadget play, I mean, the only thing I can really think of is without Njoku, we were a little worried how the offense would look because we had really gone through Njoku pretty heavily in the last couple games, and he's played great. And sometimes we've had instances where Cooper can't get open and we really get kind of stuck. So I don't know if it was like concern that maybe we wouldn't be able to move the ball or what. But obviously, like with trick plays of any kind, if it works, it works and you look like a genius. And if it doesn't work, you look like an idiot. And that's generally how that goes. It's like Kansas City runs these like drawn up in the dirt plays all the time. And when they work, you're just like, wow, that was unbelievable. Like, who even thought of that? And of course, if it fails, then you're like, oh, well, that was a little weird, but they can kind of get away with it because they're winning football games more than we are. So That's the only thing I have. I mean, for why, I don't know if you have any different ideas. I mean, it's a head scratcher, I guess.
Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it, and that's been a lot of the things that have happened in these games is they are just head scratching moments, and you start to wonder, does Kevin Stefanski have too much going on, and that you get into that whole debate of whether or not he should hand over the offensive play calling to Alex Van Pelt and simply work on managing the game. Um, but overall, it was an excellent performance and one that was desperately needed to build up some, confidence and give this team another opportunity to play another week, stay in this thing. Everybody has been talking about just in general, uh, at least, from what I've been hearing, they're saying, look, ideally, we need to win 2 out of the next 3 to keep things alive for when Watson comes back. And it certainly sounded like during Andrew Berry's press conference, by all indicators, that they are preparing for Watson to start come in game number week 12, week 13, technically at Houston, and be the starter for the last 6 games of the season for the Browns. So, but I will say the quarterback play of Jacoby Brissett, he did what we needed him to do. Granted, he did fumble the ball. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. But is 17 of 22 for 278 yards, a touchdown passing, and a touchdown on the ground. That's good. That's good. And I don't know if you read it, but I read his quote. He was talking about the scenario when he ran the touchdown in and how he was kind of thinking back to the San Diego game when he threw that pick where it looked like maybe he could have made a run to the end zone and then the Browns ended up losing the game. So, hey, a lesson learned there, and that's impressive. And then, of course, Nick Chubb up to his usual tricks, 101 yards, and the magic number, over 20 carries, 23 of them. How can you look, for all these analysts, the analytics, how can you argue with the fact that when Chubb has over 20 carries, the Browns win the game? Is that simply because they're normally leading at that point versus just, hey, if we're following our game plan, that's just how it's going to work out? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's not as simple as just turning around and handing the ball off to Nick Chubb 20 straight times and then we pick up a W. I mean, maybe he breaks a couple, but the chances are pretty slim, especially when they're stacking the box. And I think one of the things they did really well on Monday was they got the passing game going, and then the Bengals couldn't overload the box. So Nick Chubb had a few more lanes to run, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's we're protecting a lead. We'll hand the ball off, let him do his thing, let the O-line do their thing. That's more the formula than just straight handing him the ball 20 times. It's, I think we've faced a lot of really stacked boxes so far this year, and it's had some mixed reviews or results, I guess I should say. So I don't think it's quite as simple as that. You can't just run the same play every time, no matter how much Browns Twitter wants you to.
Yeah, I agree there. Kareem Hunt, he chipped in with 42 yards, 11 rushes, 11 carries, and we'll get back to him in a second. And Amari Cooper, yes, the abomination of a throw that turned into an interception, but 131 yards on 5 receptions. He laid out for a deep ball by Jacoby Brissett, and that was just impressive there. So we've got those were some of the highlights. Obviously, they had to get creative without Njoku playing on the offensive side of the ball, and they loaded it up with the extra offensive linemen. And down at the goal line, they did what they needed to do. That Bill Callahan is an impressive coach to get those guys doing what he does.
Yeah, I mean, they don't say he's best in the league for no reason. That's for sure. I don't know if you watched the Manning cast or the regular broadcast, but I was cracking up at them when they were talking about, one, the lineman came sprinting down the line in motion and just laid a guy out. And then 2, he ran a route that he really sold out on a run that they were like, he's sprinting out, and look, he took 2 guys with him. It was great. And that's one of those situations, right, where you had a gadget play with the direct snap to Chubb and it worked. And, everyone's like, great, that's awesome. It's like, hindsight, the benefit of that. And you can kind of say, oh, that was a great player. Oh, that was a terrible play. So.
Right. And you asked if I watched the Manning cast or the regular broadcast. I did tune in to the regular broadcast with Aikman and Buck. And
Yeah.
and I'm going to come back around to that because I got some thoughts about the regular broadcast that I think I'd like to share and go into a little more detail on. So keeping in mind what's coming up on the schedule, we've got the bye week coming up here on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're back in action. We got to go down to Miami, and that's not an easy place to play. Sometimes just because of the climate, the temperature, it can still be steamy hot there, and
Yeah.
you got to be well conditioned. And the Dolphins are just a pretty darn good team this year, with Tua on the field, and they've got the receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and then they add to the defense. They add Bradley Chubb. I mean,
Yeah. Wish we played them before the deadline for that reason, but hey.
yeah, absolutely, they are going to be a formidable opponent. Following the Dolphins, we are at Buffalo, and that's not looking so good. And home to
Climate whiplash too. Climate
the
whiplash.
Absolutely. And then we'll be home to the Buccaneers. And that game at the outset of the season, that looked like it was going to be real tough. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, and you never know. You never know. Tom Brady being who he is, that's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, it's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is not as looking as daunting as it did at the beginning of the season. Now, you mentioned the trade deadline. I talked a few moments ago about Kareem Hunt, and you know, no moves made at the deadline. Andrew Berry said in his press conference, he kind of alluded, well, we almost had a deal, but the compensation wasn't right, but it didn't sound like necessary. If they had lost, it may have been different, but they won, so they didn't move. They didn't move anybody, and I think that's probably a good thing to stand pat. Now, I see a lot of people talking about wanting more wide receivers, and to me, our biggest problem is not the wide receivers right now. It's the continuity on the defense and playing in all three phases of the game because our offense has been fantastic, quite frankly.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I guess in terms of what they could have gone for, I mean, they did make a trade for a linebacker, of course, a little bit ahead of the deadline. I mean, we've just been hit with so many injuries. Obviously, interior D line was maybe one we would look at. But I mean, I do think Barry in general is not super reactionary. So I don't know that he's not willing to overpay for someone if he, doesn't want to. Like he's going to evaluate it. He's got his line. I don't think he's really going to budge off of it too much. So if the price wasn't right, then the price wasn't right. And maybe you hope to get somebody in the off season that you can fill in. Or, I mean, what they did, I think Monday night, they put 4 DNs along the line, right? So and it worked out pretty well. I mean, an obvious passing situation, so a little bit different. It was kind of interesting that Cincinnati didn't scout us and see that our run defense was pretty garbage, but hey, we'll take it. But I mean, I think they're kind of getting a little more creative on defense. So the line's maybe not going to be as big of an issue going forward. But then it's also well, what took so long to make that decision? But
it's another one of those head scratching decisions that you think about. And it's funny when another team's coach looks as clueless as our coaches normally do to run the ball 36 yards on 10 attempts for the Bengals. That's just sad. And then their offensive line still stinks. We sacked Burrow 5 times. He is now, or Stefanski is 5-0 against the Bengals, and Burrow is 0-4 against the Browns. So that's what we got going on with the Browns. And I think that, hey, we got to win. We got to enjoy it since Monday, and we can enjoy it until next Sunday. And then, of course, we've got to be looking at the Dolphins, and then, of course, Buffalo.
Yeah.
So we've got that going forward. Now let's move on to something that's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more seasonal here. Let's talk some Cavs basketball. And it was good last night to have Mr. Cavalier Austin Carr back on the home broadcast on Valley Sports. Of course, I was not able to get that and being here in Virginia, so I was watching the national broadcast, and we have bookended since we were last on the air. Bookended it with wins over Boston, at Boston, and in Cleveland, both overtime thrillers. I mean, how impressed are you with what the Cavs have done so far?
I mean, what do we play Boston? I think 4 times. I was looking at the schedule. I was trying to count it up. So, I mean, you're guaranteed to go 500 against the reigning Eastern Conference champs, which is unbelievable. I mean, and with Garland being out for, most of those games, of course, and then back last night. I mean, it's just so nice to have Donovan Mitchell down the stretch, even if he didn't play particularly well yesterday. He didn't shoot the ball well, I should say, I guess. And he still down the stretch was like, no, I got this. Like, I'll take it over. No problem. Hit some huge shots. It's just they're so much fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And night in and night out, it seems like it's a different person stepping up for the team, whether it be a starter or somebody off the bench. The game in Boston last Friday, LeVert and Mitchell both go for 41 points. The next night, LeVert has 1 point, one stinking point. And you got, I mean, just great contributions, double doubles from in the game on Friday from Mobley, 19 and 10, Allen with 12 and 11. I mean, it was just a great all around team performance. And then you come back Sunday night and you overcome a little bit of adversity. Because you're down by 9 going into the fourth quarter against the Knicks at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you blow them out, outscore them 37-15. That's pretty amazing. And 23 of 50 from beyond the 3-point arc. That's unconscious shooting.
Yeah, I think they lead the league, right, in 3-point shooting. I don't know. After last night, they kind of regressed a bit, which is to be expected. But yeah, I mean, their 3-point shooting's been off the charts. I mean, every time Dean Wade's let the ball go recently, I mean, he had a tough shooting night last night, as did pretty much everybody. But especially in that game against the Knicks, I was like, oh, it's going in. Like, I'm not even questioning it. It's going in. Like, it just looks smooth coming off of his hand. And he did obviously have it. He had a career high. But yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're shooting that well, you're going to be tough to beat. But then you think about it, like, sure, you want to run us off the 3-point line, we'll throw alley-oops to the bigs all day. So there's just so many different ways that the team can beat you and attack you. I mean, you really have to be well-rounded, I think, to hang with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not just an offensive leading team. I mean, they're obviously doing well in that. They are number 5 in defense. Average, they're giving up 106.7 points per game. Now, that wouldn't cut it if this were a Mike Fratello coached team. That would not work. But in today's NBA, the top defensive team in points allowed, Milwaukee. And obviously, they're the only still at this juncture, still undefeated team in the NBA, and the Cavs are going to have to compete with them. But last night was just a great effort all around because, as we discussed, the shooting was not very good last night by anybody in particular. I mean, I will say at the outset of the game, Garland came out shooting like lights out. And that was super important for him to get on a roll. And they did enough. But there's certainly there's certainly room for improvement. And hopefully they will get there as we move forward in the in this season. They've got a big 5-game road trip coming up here. They start tomorrow at Detroit. Detroit's only 2-7, but last year they split the 4 games 2-2. Cade Cunningham, the 2021 first overall draft pick out of Oklahoma State, he's having a pretty darn good season. 23.1 points, 6.1 boards, and 6.8 assists. Averaging. and Bojan Bogdanovic averaging 22.8 points per ball game. And get this, all 5 of their regular starters are averaging in double figures. The lowest of those is Isaiah Stewart at 13.1 points per game. So they've got a good starting 5. I just don't know that they've got much else to carry them. And this has been a tough stretch for the Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a decent amount of young talent, I think. And I know I have a friend that I used to work with who's a Detroit fan, and he's like, I'm just hoping that we lose enough games to have a decent shot in the lottery. And then you've got like kind of a nice core, going once, if you did land that number 1 pick. But didn't they beat the Warriors, or am I making that up?
Well, the Pistons this season, they did have a win over the Warriors, and the Warriors are kind of struggling a little bit themselves. They're scuffling, but they've lost 2 in a row. They've lost, both of them were road games at the Bucks. This scheduling thing that they've done this year is weird.
Yeah, with the like playing at the same place 2 separate nights, but like not necessarily back to back sometimes, but sometimes there's a day between. Yeah, I've been looking at Cavs tickets when they come play the Hornets, and I have noticed that Sunday and Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, I believe those are the last 2 games of the regular season, if I recall correctly, or near the very end.
Yeah, they're in March, I think. I think there's a couple games after, but yeah, I'm
Okay.
hoping to get tickets and go for sure.
Hey, that would be great. It'd certainly be interesting to see. And then the Cavs, I guess this is not a bad thing to get one of your West Coast trips out of the way early in the season.
Yeah.
To play Sunday at the Lakers. Now, certainly the Lakers are underachieving this season.
Yeah.
Or at least on paper, you would say they're underachieving because of the talent they have. But that's kind of ugly out there. They won last night. They got Matt Ryan went from football to basketball, made a 3-pointer at the buzzer. I don't know, and they
Yeah.
so we got the Lakers on Sunday, followed by another game there in LA, taking on the Clippers on Monday. We'll see what that brings. Up the California coast to Sacramento on Wednesday, and then Friday we close it out with a game against the Warriors, and there, hey, look at this. We got some commentary on Cavs as well as Browns from our friend, the Factory of Sadness for Life there. Love to hear from you. And folks, remember that Going nuCLEar, it's presented by Buzz Sports CLE. Follow me on Twitter at egreen4325. Follow Madison at madtravels24. And you can follow the show on Twitter, Going nuCLEar CLE. So, taking a look at the West Coast swing, and it's a good test. Going on the road for 5 games, what do you think we're going to learn about the Cavs from this West Coast trip?
Yeah, I mean, I think the West Coast trip last year was really where we kind of felt like, hey, maybe this Cavs team could like make some noise, right? They, had a pretty good run. I think there's a real opportunity. A lot of the West Coast teams, to your point, have gotten off to a bit of a slow start. So you want to see a couple of wins get stacked up. I mean, I'd like to see at least probably 3-1 out of those 4 that you just listed on that West Coast trip. Golden State will probably be a tough one. Both LA teams, I don't know if we really know what we're going to get from them. Sacramento, I think, should be a win. We'll definitely see how it goes, but it's a good chance to bond. And I think the team already seems like they gel and they like each other a lot. And it's a good chance to even go beyond where they are now. Because you're on the road for so many days, you're going out to dinner, you're like exploring cities with your teammates. So I think that also helped last year kind of bring the team even closer together. And they do seem like they just like each other. So I suspect that maybe we'll get some of the kinks worked out, hopefully, where, we're trying to integrate Garland. We're trying to figure out who's going to touch the ball when and, who takes over in those key moments. And I mean, it's a little bit, you got to ride the hot hand, I guess. But I think some of those things where we maybe got a little stagnant last night, we'll stop kind of feeling that. We'll have a little bit more trust in the movement of the ball and kind of make the defense work a little more than we had, in some spots last night. So I'm excited to see what they can do. I mean, hopefully we can make some noise on the West Coast trip again. I would love a win over Golden State. I always hate them. So
Yeah, Golden State out of the box. Let's take a look at our opponents here on the West Coast swing. Well, we talked about first of all Detroit. They're 2-7 headed in, as of right now. The opponents, the people we take on the West Coast swing, you're not going to believe this, and I am hoping I can get this to work because I would love to share with everybody who is watching the standings here in the NBA, courtesy of let's see. I hope that it's up on the screen for folks, but if it's not, I apologize. The bottom teams in the Western Conference: the LA Clippers 4-4, the Warriors 3-5, the Lakers 2-5, the Kings 2-5. So that is a real opportunity for the Cavs to pick up some victories in what otherwise normally is a tough trip to make
yeah,
out to the West Coast for the East Coast teams. I wonder if the West Coast teams have the same kind of feeling when they have to make the East Coast trip.
yeah. I mean, maybe they probably like the LA teams are like, why do we have to come? You know how everyone likes to rag on Cleveland. Why do we have to go to Cleveland? No one wants to go to Cleveland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jokes on them. Jokes on them. The other big news in this week, Brooklyn is a dumpster fire right now.
So, yeah, put it mildly.
I mean, Steve Nash leaves. Allegedly, it was mutual. I don't know what that all means. I'd really be curious to know if that was driven by the players, the owners. What's going on there? It seems like it's out of control. And my question or thought is this: I think Steve Nash is going to be better off for getting out of there. Get out of Dodge because that is just not good news what you got going on there. I don't know what I mean. I think he got the most out of what he had there, considering all the drama last year with the COVID vaccination, Kyrie playing half of the games, and
Yeah.
all that craziness.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's definitely tough to, I think, manage. There's so many egos over there. And it's kind of funny because I think like Kyrie and KD left where they were for similar reasons. Like they wanted to be the guy. And now I think they're both trying to maybe be the guy on one team. And, that's part of, the job is managing those egos. And at some point it gets unmanageable, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think someone has to be the fall guy. And I think it's Nash. And maybe I wouldn't be surprised if it were actually mutual. I think I saw a quote that he basically said like they're not responding to me anymore. Like, I'll basically like effectively step back if I can't get them to respond to me. Then I don't really have a role here anymore. But I do think you're right. I do think he'll be better for it. It'll be interesting if he decides to go back into coaching because I think he was more front office for what was it, Canada? I think maybe stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if that soured his view of coaching or not. I mean, he does seem to be a great leader, and I know they alluded to it in the game last night when they hit on it. As a player, he was a great leader. I don't think that's really the problem necessarily. It just seems, and maybe their hire of the Boston guy will fix everything, and we'll add a little more fire to the fire, and we'll make it a little worse and see what happens.
yeah, absolutely. That is a head scratcher. We'll use head scratcher again to bring in Udoka. He gets suspended for the entire, for the season by the Celtics for having a inappropriate relationship with a coworker. Granted, it was allegedly, reportedly consensual, but still violating rules. And the team dropped. They threw the hammer down on him.
Yeah.
They said they went to Austin Carr and he said throw the hammer down. So
Yeah.
they did, and so that is interesting in and of itself. You got all this stuff going on, and then the icing on the freaking cake, Kyrie Irving. We were already talking, and I was already thinking about like, what is he doing just in general? We had the flat Earth conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
We had the I'm not going to get the vaccination, and here's why, et cetera, et cetera. And there, in my mind, I was already questioning, where is his legacy in Cleveland? Because I think, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about full blown coverage of the land, and we're going to bring it back around here. And I'm starting, this latest thing with the movie with the anti-Semitic tropes in it that he just posted, and he's like, I just shared it. I just shared it. Does he not understand that he has influence on people?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues going on. If he hadn't noticed, there is a lot of hatred, of divisiveness in this country amongst people of different races and religions and genders, etc. And I I I don't know about this guy. Something ain't right with him. And I do you think he's really devoted to even playing basketball anymore, or is he just
Yeah.
there?
That's a fair question. I mean, sometimes it's like the galaxy brain meme, I think, with how he views himself. Like he's just really above everyone else's level of thinking, and he's just on a playing field of his own, a flat earth of his own, if you will. And it's just some of the things he says. You're just like, why? Like, maybe just don't say that. And then he does do some good things. And I know I mentioned to you this week, like I think when WNBA went into their COVID season, there were, a handful of players that opted out, and the WNBA decided they would not pay those players. And he put together, I think a foundation is what they ended up calling it, but to pay those players that had decided to opt out for whatever reason, that they, didn't want to play. Which was great of him. I think he also hired, if not the only, but the first Black female agent in the NBA, which is also, a great thing for him to do. But the other stuff is obviously not great, and the lack of accountability is worse. And, I think where he's just saying, oh, like, I didn't know, I didn't know it was in there, like, whatever. That, you don't have that luxury in 2022 anymore. Like if you retweet something, it's a cosign for it. Like you're putting it out there on your platform. You're saying, hey, I believe this. Like we don't have a ton of space to like get into a nuanced discussion about it in social media. So if you have to caveat your opinion for it and say like, hey, like this part I agree with, this part is like truly terrible. Like you don't have that ability in that space. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think he probably heard his legacy when he said Cleveland wasn't a sports town in this town, anyways. But it is interesting because he didn't really do that stuff until he got out from under LeBron, and it maybe is something to say about LeBron's leadership and that he kept some of that in check. I mean, he left and he became a really strange dude, and he had some really strange things to say. As a Carolina fan, I'll chalk it up to the fact that he went to Duke. We'll call it that. Yeah, but it's a lot to deal with, and the lack of accountability in general is just really concerning, I think.
Right, where he's like, I accept responsibility, but he will not apologize. He will not apologize. I'm going to be real curious, and we're going to have to circle back to this and, see what happens when Silver, has a chance to talk to him. He might go all Bill O'Reilly on him. Do it live. I mean, we'll see how it goes there. But yeah, at one point I thought he has this great legacy in Cleveland. We might see his number up in the banner someday, or up in the rafters someday. I don't know. I don't know if what he's done warrants us not to acknowledge what he did on the court, but off the court, he has done what he's doing right now is detrimental to himself, detrimental to the game, detrimental, just overall. It's no good. I hope that when he has it's a productive meeting with Adam Silver, and they need to do something about this.
Hopefully. Yeah, I do agree with Factory of Sadness. I think a suspension and some forced accountability might be a good option.
he needs to go to DC, and he needs to go to the National Holocaust Museum.
Yeah.
He really needs to stop with it. I think a lot of people, or people that come up with some of this stuff, they're just, unfortunately, I lost family members in the Holocaust that were in Poland, and so it affects me. And
Yeah.
and to hear these things is not good. It's just not good. But let's turn over to some happy news here. Let's talk some happy news here. Let's talk a little bit of Guardians here, even though it is the off season. World Series, knotted up at 2 games apiece last night. Wow, a gem, a combined no hitter
Yeah.
by the Astros over the Phillies to even up the series at 2. But the Guardians, the awards last week, we talked about Chris Antonetti and the executive award and acknowledgement that he received. And this week, the team had 4 players win Gold Glove awards. All of them were first time award winners. You got Shane Bieber, Andres Jimenez, Stephen Kwan, and Miles Straw. I mean, that's pretty amazing. You got 4 of your 9 players out on the field at one time winning Gold Gloves, and the only person who was nominated that didn't win was Jose Ramirez.
Yeah.
you know, he does some other things, and has the accolades, and I'm sure these guys probably would sacrifice a Gold Glove award to win the World Series. Of note, this is the first time in an American League team has won 4 Gold Gloves since Seattle did it way back in 2003, and this is only the 8th time since 1957 that a team's won 4 Gold Gloves in a single season. So we talked about it last week. Where do we go from here? I mean, I guess my biggest question of these players, and yes, Macon is chiming in here. That's something to bark at. Miles Straw, he struggled at the plate mightily. His defense was phenomenal, but at the plate, he was a liability. What do you do with a situation like Straw?
That's a great question. It just depends, I guess, on whether you think you can get there defensively. I mean, I think we've seen in the playoffs, you have to be able to hit, and you have to be able to get on base. And ideally, you have to be able to hit home runs if you really want to go far. I'm not saying it can't be done on the defensive side, but you're going to make it a lot smaller margin for error if you're not hitting. But it is hard because they excel at their position. We were one of the best, obviously with the stats that you threw out there, the best defensive teams, which I think everybody highlighted every chance they could on the broadcast where they had to talk about the Guardians was, they're just a great defensive team. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough, but I do think we need to get some hitting, and you have to kind of pick and choose which players you're willing to part with maybe. And sacrifice a little bit of that, defensive prowess to get that hitting onto the field and into the lineup.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting off season. Certainly a lot of things to look forward to. It was great to see Tito at the Cavs game wearing a brown sweatshirt.
Yeah.
He was representing. He was representing and being supportive, and you love to see that amongst your fellow cities teams, that you're out there supporting each other and not wearing New York Yankees hats to the playoff games when you're a Northeast Ohioan, or wearing your Dallas Cowboys gear.
But hey, now he's a Browns fan and a Guardians fan, so hey.
yeah, allegedly. So something on a lighter note here that I'd like to kind of make a regular piece for us here on the program, and we're gonna call it here, yay or oy vey. And my first yay or oy vey, I turn to you for your opinion as a college basketball player and fan of NBA action, WNBA, etc. Transition 3-pointers, yay or oy vey?
I do think I have to say oy vey, but mostly because when I was a college coach and I would recruit, everybody would take transition threes, but they're not putting in the same work effort that like Steph Curry's putting in when he takes his transition three. So it's air ball after air ball and just really just alternating down the court, not really making it past even the top of the key. And that was incredibly frustrating to watch. For the most part, I'm like kind of okay with it in the NBA, except for when there's a really obvious layup. And it wasn't transition, but I do want to point out Mitchell made a couple of really nice extra passes. I think like at Randolph Macon, the men's team that just won the national championship, got to throw that in there. Their big thing is like one more. And like that was such a good one more. Like I have a good shot. I'm going to give it up for a better shot. And so that's where the transition threes I have a problem with. If you have a pretty clear layup or it's a 3-on-1 and we're hitting taking a three, I don't love it. It better go in is what I'm saying. It's like, it's only a bad shot if you miss, but if you miss, it's a really bad shot.
Yeah, I'm going to go with, I am now turning into an old fart. I am turning into an old fart. I'm middle-aged and I am starting to be get off my lawn guy. I watch people who have no business shooting pull-up threes in transition, pulling up for three.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, it's kind of like in football, take the 3 points. Well, take the 2 points. Go take the layup. Maybe you get fouled. You talked about, so for me, it's an, overwhelming. I'm going oy vey. Okay. Call me old, call me what you will. I'm going oy vey. But I will, in regard to what you're talking about with Donovan Mitchell, that one more pass, that great, he made a great look. I believe you're talking about the pass in the first half down to Dean Wade on the baseline, just right of the basket, and he dunked it home, got fouled, went to the line for the 3-point play. And Dean Wade, good defense to close out the ball game on the road.
Yeah, I think a little maybe surprising. I think his defense might be a little underrated. I mean, they did have the confidence to put him out there in the crunch situation. And I did think he held up pretty well. Obviously, he contested well, and he contested without fouling at the end of overtime, I guess it was. So yeah, I mean, I do like Dean Wade. I mean, I think it's interesting they extended him, and I thought, I don't know if I would have done that. And now I'm like, that was a great decision. Now that you see the work he's maybe put in the off season to kind of take himself to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's interesting coming back around. Isaac Okoro is basically planted on the bench right now. He can't get off the bench because the other guys have jumped ahead of him and are not only providing defense, they're providing offense. Although last night nobody was really great shooting, even Love, he struggled. It's and a bunch of that stuff. You're going to have that. I guess hopefully Okoro is putting in the work off the floor so that when he is, when it's his turn and they send him in, hopefully he will be prepared to take advantage of his opportunities. All right. So we talked transition threes. My next topic, this is a little pop culture here, a little pop culture. But the McRib sandwich, yay or oy vey?
I may disappoint you. I have never once had a McRib, so I guess I would have to go oy vey. Not really any rhyme or reason as to why I haven't. I just I've never had a McRib.
Well, not that I keep full on kosher, but I don't do the pork thing. And so that's why I haven't necessarily tried it. But to me, referencing, the Simpsons here, that is a whatchamacarcus sandwich. Now, the fact that status for life, he says 100%. Yes, he's all in on the McRib sandwich and McRib for life. But to me, you got to, that's not a real quote unquote barbecue sandwich. It is meat pressed together, just like their chicken nuggets, their beaks and claws or whatever they, put into the chicken nuggets. And then they dump a bunch of sauce on it. And yes, it might taste okay, but what are you really tasting? I mean, this is ridiculous. And they keep bringing it back, and people keep going and eating it. Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me with the stupid McRib? I'm going oy vey on that. And for a multitude of reasons, screw the McRib. Okay. Get rid of the stupid McRib. I want, if you're going to come, you need to be in Cleveland. We want the MDP, the Michael Dean Perry sandwich, or Brad's Deluxe, or, let them know. We want the Brad's Deluxe back there. Now, my understanding is, though, this is their farewell tour, but I don't buy it. This is like Disney. They're like, we're sending it to the vault. We're not going to bring it out. Yeah, baloney. You'll bring it out some point because you're going to be doing sad in business. You're going to want to bring it out. But
yeah, that's true.
So you got that going on with the McRib, and I am going to go back to the one more time. Talk about another pop culture food here. Nacho fries at Taco Bell.
I also have not had these, but I will say yay because cheese fries are always good in my book. Anytime you put cheese on fries, I am in. I just haven't been to Taco Bell in a while because I just finished this challenge where I had to eat super healthy. So now that they're back, maybe I'll have to pop over and try some.
Yeah, I'm gonna say oy vey because you know what? And let me explain why. I'm thinking, look, come on, Taco Bell, stay in your lane. Look, they're even doing a campaign with Pete Davidson.
Yeah.
Yeah, we may have created, too many things, blah, 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 blah. Stay in your lane. You barely do anything else right. You can't get the orders right. And now you're putting out nacho freaking fries. Why don't you stick to your crappy 59-cent tacos and ridiculous Mexican pizzas, which I love, and bean burritos, et cetera, I'm not going to say I won't eat there. Not going to say that I wouldn't eat there. But it's just one of those things. They need to stay in their lane. And I think they need to first master the art of getting an order right and having good edible food. I think that's
that's fair. That is fair. Taco Bell is the kind of food that shines at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday or a Friday night when you've been out for a bit drinking. It's definitely that kind of place.
It absolutely is. Absolutely. I concur. I concur about that. And apparently, I don't think I'm bitter. I really don't. I'm gonna have to argue that I am not bitter. I'm just speaking the truth here. What can I say? And with all of that being said, I think it's time that we go nuclear. Madison, what's your topic tonight?
I think, especially as we closed the trade deadline for the NFL, the thing that gets on my nerves the most about Twitter in particular nowadays is when someone like, Schefter or whoever will tweet about somebody who's getting traded or someone, who got signed. That's maybe not a bona fide superstar. And the first tweet you see is who? As if they couldn't wipe the floor with you in probably any sport that you chose. I cannot stand when people do that and try to belittle someone because they're not, someone who's a full out star making, hundreds of millions of dollars in their contract, whatever. They're still making more money than you, like LeBron used to say, how much money do you have? When he had that whole thing in Miami, it's just an annoying thing. It's people don't do that at your job. If someone logged into work and they were oh, so-and-so did this yesterday and people were who? No one does that to you in your real life. So I don't know why we have to feel we always have to belittle people. Same thing goes for any women's sports tweet. I hate reading the replies because they're always who cares? Get in the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. And it's those people could also wipe the floor with you in pretty much any given game. Like most of the people that say that are people that are sitting on their couch, haven't played the sport, barely know anything about the sport, but act like they do, that kind of thing. And I really just wish, I mean, and I don't know that it's going to get any better. It's probably only going to get worse with Elon Musk at the helm, but like Twitter could just do a lot better by just saying like, hey, if you don't have anything like, positive to say, like just leave it alone. We don't need to always tear each other down. Like we can have a little bit of positivity, or just be quiet, I guess. But yeah, that's my thing today. It's like when the trade deadline happened and everybody was like, oh, who's that? Who even cares? Like, I don't know who that is. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you should like learn your team a little better because that guy played for your team, like that kind of thing. I just can't.
Yeah, I great point, and I hear you on that, because it is a world out there where everybody thinks that their opinion matters, just like us. We think our opinion.
Yeah.
But there's positives, there's negatives, there's observations, etc. And the commentary on people, it's gotten a bit out of control. I think you're right on there, and you make an excellent point. I'm going to be curious to see how, just like you said, how this evolves or devolves, as the case may be.
Yep.
So I got a couple things that I want to go nuclear about tonight. The first of which, and this is not the first example of it, this is just the most recent example of it. I'm trying to watch the game on Monday night. I'm trying to watch, trying to enjoy it. And you know what? This thing with the Browns, I understand we have been a factory of sadness for many years, okay? But one thing that I think is absolutely ridiculous, it's misleading, is this whole thing, the stat that is constantly brought up. Well, the Browns have had 33 starting quarterbacks since 1999. Okay, it's not like we sat there and said, no, you suck, sit down. No, you suck, sit down. How many times, sadly enough, has it been because of a freaking injury?
Yeah.
Okay? We're not benching these people for the sake of benching them. Okay, yes, that's happened, but that happens elsewhere. They act like we've gone through all these quarterbacks all these seasons because we just can't make up our minds. No, that's not the case. Were they great? No, they weren't. But the bottom line is, it's a misleading statistic that they love to point out every time they can about the Cleveland Browns. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. I can't stand it. Come up with something new. I mean, maybe they're saying to us, hey, win a few games and we won't talk about that. But I kind of feel like that's the way they treat Cleveland.
Yeah, it definitely, I think, is the way they treat Cleveland. And I mean, we'll add another one by the end of the year. So how about that? Let's just see how many we can add, I guess. But hopefully that's the last one for a while. Hopefully we're pretty steady after Watson.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully so. And the other thing, which I am losing my mind over, I am absolutely losing my stinking mind over the fact that my sports are being ruined. They are being ruined by political ads. They're not even true. They're all a bunch of made up misinformation. It's a bunch of crap. Get off the airwaves. Don't take money from these asshats and give them a platform to speak to all these million people at one stinking time. And you got a bunch of gullible morons who listen to this crap. I can't take it. ESPN Cleveland, give me a break. You can get other people to advertise on your stupid channel, yet you put these fools on. Absolutely ridiculous. They are a bunch of morons. I can't believe this crap is going on in our country, that we have these kinds of things coming on our airwaves and getting in the heads of people and listening. You know what they do? They want to make kids be man or a boy, and they're supposed to be a girl, and they want to give them drugs. Shut up! Shut up. You're twisting the facts. You're ridiculous. You're a liar. Okay? You're just a liar. You're twisting things, and you're trying to fit this narrative that's not there. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, to even take that another step, I mean, like after you voted, you should be like out of any political ads for the duration of the campaign. Like once you vote, if you voted early, like great. I don't want to see it. I'm done with it. Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. That's a great point. It's
Yeah.
not really what you're looking for when you're trying to watch the game.
No, I mean, if you're going to ruin something, or if you want to do that, why don't you advertise on a news station, on a station that's running political stuff? That would be the platform. Those are the people who care. Okay. Um, Sorry, I just don't care to listen to the nonsense when I am trying to watch a show in prime time, trying to watch a sporting event, or listen to the sports radio during the daytime. It's a bit much. It's gotten way out of hand. I will be very happy when the midterm elections have come and gone. I know that there's still going to be things out there, but
Then we'll be on 2024.
yes, absolutely. That will be the next thing that we have to stare down. So yeah, all in all, all right. Now that I can get my blood pressure down, it's all good. Uh, We've got a big week coming up here for the Cavs. No
Mhm.
Browns this week, but we'll regroup next week and we will talk about the preview of the Browns and the Dolphins. We'll get to go over how the Cavs are doing on their West Coast swing, and we'll see if there's any news in Guardians land. I think it'll be another fantastic week here for Cleveland sports. And folks, once again, want to thank you for tuning in. Going nuCLEar, presented by Buzz Sports CLE. You can tweet me at egreen4325, or you can follow and tweet Madison at MadTravels24. You can follow the show on Going nuCLEar CLE. Please, if you watch us on YouTube, subscribe. Share it with your friends. Let them know we're here. We're talking Cleveland sports. We'd love to have you chime in here. Thank you, of course, to our friends Factory of Sadness for Life for joining in. As always, you are our loyal listener. You're a super fan. You're just a super fan right there. We got to love you. And I want to thank Craig Fountain for helping put this all together. It's fantastic as always. So for Madison Delaney, I'm Ethan Greenberg. You've been watching Going nuCLEar, full blown coverage of the land. We'll see you next week.